DC, good morning. Welcome into the Blitz. How you doing, sir?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Before we get into the Nick Saban conversation, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Bama hoops and Nate Oats, something we brought up in that first segment. One of the listeners, viewers on Facebook, already a little upset that that Nate Oats is being mentioned in the job, and was like, I don't want him if he's going to be a one and done type of coach. And I guess my question to you is this not a good thing for Alabama that Nate Oats, out of the blue, not as out of the blue as some people think, but out of the blue, already being mentioned as the potential coach for another big-time program?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing for Alabama. It just goes to show you that Greg Byrne went out and got the right guy for the job for Alabama, and it goes to show you that if a program like Michigan, who's has a great history in basketball, is looking to Nate Oats as a potential candidate, he's just top of the list. If he's one of their top of the list, then Alabama got a great addition in Nate Oats. And I love what he said. I mean, I like it when a coach hits it head on. I just like his personality, the way he does that. He came out, and, he was hearing rumblings. He obviously got some phone calls, or some people in his camp got some calls. And he said, hey, I'm going to set the record straight. And he did. He was at Alabama, looks forward to the challenge here. And then, yesterday morning he was on another radio show in Birmingham. And he even went a little further and said that, God had a plan for everything in his life, and he felt like God's plan for him was to be at Alabama. If God's plan for him to be at Michigan, it would have worked out differently, and it didn't. It worked out where he feels like he's following God's plan. So I like that, the coach to come out and say those things up front. And a lot of coaches will think those things but never tell you. I'm glad he's the type of coach that likes to tell us what's going on.
Yeah, and for those Alabama fans that may not know or may not know the full background, part of Nate Oats' coaching career, his high school career, was in the Michigan area, and so that's part of the reason he came up. Do you think, and I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit, do you think that Nate Oats was contacted the way they contact coaches as a serious candidate?
I really do. I would think they would be crazy not to. I mean, Nate Oats is one of the up and coming coaches in the whole NCAA, and I think that they would have to look at those candidates that they think might be available. And the only reason he'd be available is if coming to Alabama so quickly and not really having a full season, an opportunity for him to stay up north, stay in an area where he's well familiar with recruiting wise, good a coach as he is, and I'm sure someone reached out to him to see how solidified he was, how his roots had already taken place in Alabama. And they would be a fool not to do that. So I think yes, for sure.
Yeah, and also one of his other statements is he mentioned specifically one of his former high school coaches. One of his coaches is also the longest tenured coach on that staff. Let's talk a little bit more basketball news with one of the top players, McDonald All-American, right here in our state. Trendon Walford still hasn't made a decision, DC. When you look at that situation, what are your thoughts surrounding this Trendon Walford decision? Something that still can be very positive for the young man, but is it getting into that gray area where some of the excitement and luster around it may be wearing off? And which way do you think he's leaning?
Well, I think the more you delay something, maybe the luster is taken off a little bit. But I think in his camp, he's got some family members, some people who are advisors are giving him advice. But in reality, I think possibly the things that went on in LSU's kind of aided in this delay. I think the Will Wade situation, the questions about the program there at LSU, and because I really believe he's leaning toward LSU. I think LSU was a front runner. I think he wants to go somewhere where he can shine and be the person at the next level. I believe he thinks he's that type of player, and that remains to be seen, of course. But I think his advisors are telling him that. So I think of the schools he's got remaining, probably Alabama and LSU is the choice that's going to be made. At this point, I think Alabama has a good shot just because of the difficulties that are going on with the LSU program at this time. I think they've done everything they can at the LSU to try to gloss that over and to help in recruiting, but I'm not so sure that the powers that be really believe that LSU will go through this unscathed after everything is said and done. So,
yeah,
I think there could be a cloud of the program there.
Yeah, I think he's taking a real chance in going to LSU in terms of the uncertainty around that program. And it just dawned on me. I preached Wallace Wade back from the grave and took him from Alabama to LSU earlier. I said Wallace Wade. Oh my goodness! Sometimes you say things you did later on with Will Wade. For those of you who were listening earlier, Wallace Wade is not coaching down at LSU. It is Will Wade. Anyway, DC. As we continue the conversation, I want to transition a little bit over to football. And I want to talk to you about this. The transfer rule is where I want to get deep with you. But go ahead.
Before
you
transfer to football, can I say one more thing about basketball?
Yes, sir.
One thing that Nate Oats said yesterday, every Alabama fan should wake up, raise their eyebrows, and say, hey, we got a coach that's ready to compete. Yesterday, another thing that he said was, and this is a quote from him, he said, anything other than this year making the NCAA tournament is unacceptable. I'm coming into a program that's got talent. There's no reason, even playing in the SEC, shouldn't be a reason that the team that I'm coaching right now can't make the NCAA. Now, how many coaches make that statement their first time they come in to coach? That's not what you normally hear. I like it. I like the idea. I like his moxie. I like his personality. And I'm looking forward to an upcoming season with Alabama basketball. I think Nate Oats is going to be the type of coach. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say we hadn't seen this type of coach at Alabama since Flip Sanders was coaching. And they remind me so much of the way they talk. So I'm looking forward to this season. Yeah,
and if you think about personality-wise, we've kind of had subdued coaches. In comparison to Wimp, they would be subdued anyway. But they've actually had, as a whole, on the court and the way they coach the game was kind of subdued in a lot of ways. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think that's a twofold message. I think he believes it, but I also think he needs them to believe it.
He does.
He needs them to believe it.
Same thing Coach Saban does. He's saying that because he believes it, but he wants them to know he believes it, and he wants them to believe it too.
Right. What we're going to do, DC, is actually we're going to go ahead and go to break here, and then coming back, we're going to let you hear what Nick Saban had to say about grad transfers and not where he's talking about the transfer rule, not just grad transfers, but transfer rules and immediate eligibility, and we'll dive into that conversation coming up right after the break. All right, let's get back into the conversation with DC Capstone Report, our weekly guest. We got Gregory who has a question for DC. When we come out of that question, we're going to give you that audio where Nick Saban was on with Feinbaum and talking a little bit about the transfer. Here's Gregory. Gregory, you're in with the Blitz. What's on your mind, man?
Hey, roll tide, y'all. Hey, DC, by our basketball coach, man, did he really say that, this season that look forward trying to make it to the, playoff or something?
Yeah, Gregory, he did. He didn't really just say try to make it. He said anything short of the NCAA tournament is unacceptable for this team that he's taken over, and that's his goal, and that's what he wants everybody to understand. He said most coaches don't come out and tell you that, but he's going to be honest.
Right.
Everything he's going to say he's going to be honest with, because he wants to be held accountable as much as he wants to hold players accountable.
But DC, you know that brought out, that he just watched the player and he watched how they, practicing, and he's looking at that hard to me.
That's right, and he didn't just say that. He went on to explain why he believed it. He talked about each player that he had on his roster and what he could develop from them, what they already had.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm catching from you when you say that. Because I'm a type of man that believes in faith. You see, I believe in strong faith. When you look at a child's heart and the effort to work, you got yourself something. And you just let me know, he letting us know that it's all of them that are ready to work real hard. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm excited, waiting. I'm so excited. I'm waiting. You know what I'm saying? I want to see this.
Well, Greg,
I think all Alabama fans are excited, or should be. All the basketball fans should be fine. So.
Okay, now, Martin, back to your question about that transfer rule. It gonna, my opinion, it gonna benefit Bama more in other school. Cause let me tell you why.
Interesting.
You know, we believe in talking about the top coaches to train players. Other schools can't afford these type of coaching what we be trying to put in. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now let's look at it like this right here. All right, Ole Miss. What type of coaching staff they got? They really can pull a freshman to the side and said, "Young man, this is the way you're supposed to carry yourself if you want to go to the next level." I've been to the next level, and this, your action showing a failure in life. So I'm saying.
I hear what you're saying, Greg.
So this what I'm looking at is like have and have not. And Bama always gonna have top coach. Have. We always gonna have something. Do you agree, DC?
Well, I agree a little bit, Gregory. What I'm saying by that is this. I think Alabama's always going to benefit from the transfer rule. I think Coach Saban is trying to be really the kind of guy that's going to say, "Hey, we benefit from this, but this may not be the best thing for the players." I can go into that a little deeper, but I think that's what he's trying to say.
All right, Greg, I got to get to that audio so we can get a little deeper on this conversation.
All right, my partner.
Appreciate you, Greg. Thanks.
Right.
All right, James, let's hear that audio from Nick Saban in terms of what he had to say in regards to transferring and transfer rule.
I get a little concerned sometimes. Are we putting the decision-making in the wrong hands? I mean, I think everybody needs to understand. We all have football programs, and there's a lot of good coaches out there, and they have good programs, and their programs are all geared toward helping young people be successful, helping them do the right things, make good choices and decisions, get an education, be the best player they can be. And some kind of way there's a perception that we're taking advantage of somebody. And we're trying to help them. All right, so when we try to make somebody do the right thing and they can run down the hall and leave, it would be the equivalent of one of your children saying, "You're reprimanding your child, and I'm just going to move this next door. I don't have to do that." I mean, so what are we really doing here? The graduate transfer thing, I think, if we've done our job and helped the guy graduate, and we've done everything we can to help him develop, and he doesn't have a role on our team and he thinks that he could go someplace else and have a better chance, I'm okay with that. But I do think that if you have a graduate transfer and you've done your job and he leaves, you ought to get a scholarship back for that. You ought to get an initial back for that. So, because it's hard to manage your numbers when you have all these guys exiting, which really kind of penalizes the guys that are left on your team and their chances of being successful. So, those two things probably, and they're both about managing rosters and what's right and wrong for players to be able to do. And I think it's okay for guys to transfer, but we give out waivers left and right. And guys are immediately eligible. So there's no consequence. They made a commitment. When you make a commitment and you don't see it through, there's usually a consequence. It's a fact of life. It's a part of life. And we should be teaching these lifelong lessons to young people, when they're going to college.
DC, there's so much there, and I had said I was going to set aside tomorrow to talk about this roster management, because I think that's going to become the new buzzword in college football. Nick Saban usually pushes the envelope, and he hits a couple different things in their grad transfers, and I thought his insight there was interesting. But I want to talk about the transfer rule, just meaning the undergrad with you first, and then we can dig a little deeper. When you look at Nick Saban's approach to the grad transfer rule, Chuck Hunt, who a regular viewer on Facebook, said that he heard sincerity in. He said, "I believe that I hear sincerity in Coach Saban, but I detect selfishness in his interview at the same time." What's your just first of all overall assessment of what Nick Saban just said about the transfer rule?
Well, I think he was being sincere. I think he's really trying to help the player here. I think the reason I believe that, you got to look at the whole big picture of what Coach Saban's talking about. I guess the selfishness part of it is maybe in the roster management that you're going to talk about tomorrow or later in the show or later in the week. But the roster management, that's something that's affecting him. That may be a little selfish in that, but it's a real thing that he's having to go through. All coaches are going through. But getting back to the big picture, I think he's trying to do something here that's going to help the player at the next level. And I think the whole idea of Alabama is you're developing a player that can get all he can get out of in college, get him a degree, get him education, so he can be further in life afterwards. Winning some championships while he's here, have a great opportunity to win championships, enjoy his whole college career. But those that are elite enough to play at the next level, you're developing them into players to be at the next level at the NFL. And Alabama's done a great job of all that. So the process is working in that. And what he's saying here, I believe, is the bigger picture is when you give an opportunity for a young person to make a decision to transfer for any reason, and then you make them immediately eligible, there's no consequences to that. Then you're hurting that player in things that come along later. Well, what I say is this is a microcosm of our whole world right now we live in. We're a world that you can quit, and you can quit anything. If you don't like it, you just quit. And I don't think that's the world that we really want. That's the Me Too type. I want mine, want everything, do what I want to do type world. Mm-hmm. That's not the world that you really want, because that doesn't teach a young man how to make it in this life. Because there's going to come a lot of things come up against you, and quitting is not the way to advance or to make it. So I think that's what he's trying to say in the bigger picture. That's why I think it's really he's trying to help the players.
There was one statement he made in there that I think kind of drives which side of this issue you come down on. He says, "We're trying to help, but people believe we're trying to take advantage of these young players." And whichever side you come down on, do you think these coaches are really trying to help the student, or if they're trying to hurt the student, determines whether you think they should be immediately eligible? And I guess that becomes the next question is what do you come down on in terms of should they make them immediately eligible? And if not, what are some of your thoughts in terms of kids transferring?
No, I don't think a student should be immediately eligible to transfer. I don't think that should be a given rule. I think there should be conditions on it to transfer. And I think there should be times when a player is immediately eligible. I think there's scenarios for all of them. I agree with Coach Saban. If you discipline a kid, if you try to make them into the person they need to be, change their attitude, say, hey, this is not going to work on the next level, you need to change this, and that person just doesn't like it, and they say, I don't like it here, I'm going somewhere else, I'm going to take my ball and go home, so to speak. There's no other reasons in the transfer. Then I think there should be some conditions on that. If there's something that develops at the school, I can see players having no problems in the school. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, and some conditions exist. For example, a coach leaves, or just what happened down at Florida recently. Dan Mullen came out with a big bold statement and said, "Hey, if you got a problem with people transferring, you're not doing too good a job on the front end recruiting, are you?" That's his statement. Well, yeah, just two guys transfer. The first guy transferred because he got into trouble there. There were some allegations of sexual abuse of some girls in his dorm room. The second guy to transfer is the kid that was in his dorm room who went to the coaching staff and said, "Please get me out of this guy. I don't want to be around this type of behavior," way before any behavior was detected, and they did nothing about it. So there's two kids, different stories. One, I think, has a reason to transfer. The other one doesn't need to get a waiver. And so I think there needs to be conditions on it. You can't just have an open waiver policy. Everybody gets a waiver. I don't think what you're teaching the kid that way time is, hey, it's okay to quit. And I don't think that's the message you want to be sending.
DC, and I think that's the problem is there's no rhyme or reason for why they give waivers. It's obvious that Justin Fields and Tate Martell both transferred because now they may have made up some other stuff. The reality of it is they transferred because someone else beat them out or they didn't beat out the guy they thought they were going to beat out. Let's be real. But then there's other legitimate times where you think, okay, this guy's going to get a waiver and he doesn't. And I think it's the inconsistency of that bothers me probably as much as any part of it. And I want to continue that conversation. But what I want to ask you when we come back from the break, and Pat also has a question for you, DC, on the transfer market. But what I want to ask you is regarding how a coach can backfill. Saban hinted at that. Should there be some type of assistance to the coaches, and would that be conditional? We're speaking with DC Capstone Report, DCCapstoneReport.com. You can find weekly podcast there. They're taking a siesta. They will be back, and we'll let DC tell you when they plan to ramp things back up right here on the Blitz on Tide 102.9 and 100.9. Pat, you're in with DC. What's your question?
Hey, quickly, DC, you just touched on it. You touched on about the fact about recruiting character. The Saban rule totally hoodwinked the coaches. You got it to a point where they cannot go out and evaluate these kids as much as needs to be when they're sophomores and juniors. Now that we've got early signing period, and this is all part of it. But to me, only two scenarios should allow a kid to transfer with immediate eligibility: a head coach leaving and or NCAA sanctions for bowl bans. Those are the only two scenarios that should allow a kid to transfer.
I'll quickly say this and then let DC respond. I think there's another one. I think that sometimes family situations change and kids need to move back home. Kids go across the country, and I've seen that happen a few times.
Well, the parents dying or something, Martin, that's one thing. Other, right, I'll give you that.
What I'm saying is I've seen the NCAA give one kid a transfer when his parents were sick, then they tell the next kid no. And that's what I'm saying is it just be one way or the other. But that would be another one that I would say would need consideration. Go ahead, DC.
Go ahead,
Well,
DC.
I agree with those. Those are definitely conditions, I think, that warrant a transfer. I think we're too loose. I think we're not consistent. I don't think it's been played out well in the NCAA. I don't think they're giving a good look as to what the players are transferring, and I just think the whole system needs to be revamped at this point.
Yeah, if it's not, it's going to be the wide open Wild West, especially in the SEC West. Hey, fellas, have a blessed day. Thank y'all for what you do. Bye bye.
Thanks, Pat. DC, I guess a couple quick questions for you. Should there be some type of backfill for coaches, especially when it comes to you can address the grad transfer, especially when a coach loses a grad transfer? Should there be some type of backfill on that scholarship?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I've always been an advocate for replacing scholarships. If you have a player who transfers out, grad transfer, and that player, you've done everything you can for that player, and they can't compete at your school, and they got a better chance going somewhere else, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't, why a team shouldn't receive a scholarship for that person so they can help somebody else. There's a lot of players on the team that could use scholarships if they have available or to give. The regular transfer rule, I don't see. To me, if you do the recruiting and you get them in and they're just transferring on their own volition, and you're going to give them some type of easy way to get out, then I think there should be some kind of substitute scholarship for that. But I think I hope that's not the way we go. I hope we go to more stringent transfer rules that only allows them to transfer in certain instances, and those instances are issues that come up while they're there. It's the coach leaving or on probation, or of course, something going on with their family, need to transfer back home. So, I think in those scenarios, if you make it so stringent, then yes, you should be able to substitute those scholarships.
And this is something I truly believe, DC. I believe that Nick Saban absolutely loves the game of college football and wants to protect the integrity of it. So him saying this, because would the immediate eligibility rule help or hurt Alabama more? Which one do you think?
It's gonna help Alabama more.
Right.
Other teams. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Everybody said he's being selfish. I think he's being unselfish.
Right.
By clamping down on it, because he could get players from any school that he wanted to for any reason if they just want to jump ship and come to somewhere else or change their mind or think they get a better chance to come to Alabama once they've tested the waters on the other side where they've made a decision between Alabama and other schools. So
think about this year with it being an obvious need at inside linebacker. And we still may get Ruggs from Ole Miss. It's rumored that he's going to transfer. But just think if immediate eligibility was possible, how easy would it be for Nick Saban to go out and get an all-SEC linebacker or an all-ACC linebacker to come in and play if he didn't have to sit out and wait?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Alabama benefits from the transfer rule. I think Coach Saban doesn't like the overall rule. And even though Alabama benefits from it, he's still going to advocate his positions, what he thinks to just kind of keep college football. It doesn't mean he's not going to take advantage of it.
Right.
He'll take advantage of the rule as long as he can. He'll do that. He'll take advantage of the rule, but he'll always say, and it's not new. Coach Saban's not coming out this year saying this. He came out 3 years ago saying this.
Right.
So he's just advocating his position as to what he believes best for college football.
DC, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's fine.
Tell our listeners what you got coming up and how they can stay in touch with you.
We're on a little break right now with the podcast. So Lance is putting up some pictures and videos of Alabama football of this past year, different things, and we've been following the softball runs, the NCAA. We'll keep putting things up about that as well. But you can catch us at dccapstonereport.com. You can like us on Facebook at DC Capstone Report, or you can follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50. DavidCott50 on my Twitter. We'll be coming back with a new podcast right around the time of the SEC meetings that happened in Destin, Florida. So we'll be talking about that in the days ahead.
All right, that's DC Capstone Report at DavidCott50 or DCCapstoneReport.com. Thanks, DC. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Martin, and roll tide.